All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Melissa Chellikel. I'm here with our Culture Works team, and today we are going to be hearing from one of our human resources business partners, Kimberly Clay, on preparing your company for the return to work process. So this has definitely been a hot topic surrounding coronavirus and COVID-19 for the past couple of weeks with many of our clients. So I'm excited to present to you a little bit and then also bring in Kim. So just a couple housekeeping items as we usually go through. If you've been on these before with us, please ensure that you're muted. I've just muted all of you and it looks like nobody has their video on. I will ask Kim to put her video on, but let me make sure I can do that. And then there we go. All right, perfect. So Kim will be on video, there she is, and I'll be on video. And then everybody else, just go ahead and stay muted. If you do have questions for us, we will have a Q&A here at the end of today's presentation. Typically those last until about 12:45, totally voluntary if you want to stay. If you have questions, there's usually some pretty juicy ones that come up. So I do recommend you stay on for that. But if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and ask it to just me in the chat box. So in Zoom, just down on the bottom, you'll just hit chat, you'll go to CultureWorks and you can chat me privately. That way everybody else's screens aren't sort of pinging and dinging during the presentation and being distracting. A recording will be available for you to share with your team. Typically, I send these out within about 24 hours of the presentation. So if you miss anything or if you want to re-listen to it or send it to somebody else on your team, we can definitely send you that recording. So a little bit about CultureWorks if you're new to attending one of these webinars. Basically, our saying lately has been, we keep you together when social distancing keeps you apart. And our whole vibe right here is culture connectivity for your purpose, people, and processes. You'll notice that in our email signatures and all over our website as well. We offer HR and talent assessments, integrative HR support, culture operations, management coaching, as well as learning and development. Lots of fun trainings and webinars like this as well. So more than human resources, we align purpose to operationalize culture for your people. Today, Kim is going to be going over a few different topics, whoops, on return to work. That was the wrong slide, pardon me. But first, she's going to dive into evaluating reopening and what that's going to look like. So Kim, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Melissa, for that introduction. And hi to everyone. Hope you're having a good week. And yeah, we're talking about this whole reopening. Some of you, I know, are already actively in that phase. And this is a lot, this is a process, right? You all took the steps of sending your employees home and making sure, how do we figure out this work from home life? Like, some of us got adjusted into it, and now it is all getting back into the office. And what does it look like? And it's not going to be the same, right? It's not as easy as flipping the switch. The switch is on and we're all back in the office. It's going to be very different. And there's, some detailed steps that, we're going to go through, and just guidance that, we're going to review. And after, reviewing this webinar, Melissa had mentioned there are going to be some questions, but also afterwards, if you're like, I really need some more hands-on approach, please feel free to reach out to the CultureWorks team. We're here as a resource because every organization is different. And so it's figuring out what makes sense for you guys. Okay. So sorry, that was, so when we're looking at the reopening, first and foremost, what are your federal, state, and local ordinances? So again, everything is changing day by day. What I recommend to you all is to be just wherever you live. If you live in San Diego, or if you live in Long Beach or LA, or wherever you live, have a look every day. Maybe just calendar yourself every day. Maybe it's 12 o'clock just to check up on what the ordinance is, because there are things that are changing. For example, San Diego recently, we now are required to temperature check our employees coming in to the office, whereas other cities, that's not a requirement. Another really great resource that please have it on your favorites. Your bookmark is the CDC. The CDC is an excellent guidance on recommendations. They have a dedicated page for business and employers. We constantly go to the CDC. They have a plethora of information. So, after looking at, what are the local ordinances requiring, and also, are you essential? If you're essential, probably you guys are already opened up. And if you're not essential, start thinking about what that is, because you want to be ahead of the curve if you are not essential and you're waiting for that green light. And then through that process, think about who needs to be involved. Create a task force. Think about, some companies do have a dedicated safety representative. Maybe it's someone in operations. Also considering pulling in some different department managers. When you create this task force, think about this task force is going to live with you through COVID-19. So you guys will strategize together on what that plan is in the beginning. So right now, before you open, and then these are going to be what I like to call your safety facilitators. They're going to be those ones reminding everyone of social distancing, and carry on this process as we're down this COVID-19 journey. Another thing to be aware of is the lovely acronym in HR. We live in acronyms, is the FFCRA. And why this is important and why we're talking about this with reopening is really what that means is there are employees who are eligible for up to 2 weeks partially paid sick leave, or up to 10 weeks of partially paid expanded family and medical leave reason, for the qualifying reason of which is caring for children whose school or place of childcare is closed. So unfortunately, we do know that not all schools are actually, it's now summertime, they're closed, and daycare facilities are closed as well. Most importantly, what I would really recommend too is doing a pulse check survey. So I actually sent this out to a company last week, and it's really a work from home pulse check survey. If you are a company who has not gone yet into the office, you can ask questions on asking them, what are your thoughts about coming back into the office full-time, part-time? Also asking about what are your thoughts on, do you have fear coming back into the work? How are they doing working remotely? How productive are they? And then also asking questions about the children component, because you will need to make considerations with that piece. So highly recommend, reaching out to your employees, getting a pulse before you open the floodgates. Okay, so like I said earlier, it's not as simple as just coming into the office and flipping the switches on. You really need to create a strategy and implement procedures. So first and foremost, like I said earlier, consider what screenings are required by your local ordinance. So for example, in San Diego, we are required for temperature checks. Also face masks, and thinking about who's going to be administering if you are doing screenings at your office. Are you going to be doing it outside? And who will be doing it? If you do have someone doing it, please have it be either a consistent person or consistent group of people, have them trained. And really important to make sure the screening is permissible under the ADA. Create a workflow of how to do it. We have some great resources in this area. We have a great acknowledgement for employees to sign off regarding, face mask and temperature checks. And then also, this is a time for you to document the safety measures that you will be taking. So have it all documented, create a plan that documents what safety measures, so social distancing, requiring employees to use maybe hand sanitizer before, every hour. I know some companies are doing every hour, every 2 hours. And then also, how are you going to be communicating the safety measures? Highly recommend that you communicate the safety when you decide to reopen, crafting a plan of, say, return to work letter with how the safety measures are being documented. So they have this awareness, before they come in, okay, I'm coming into work. I know that the office, they have now maybe closed off the lunchroom, or I know now that we're actually not using, only conference rooms are only going to have 3 people, and we're only going to have, it's going to be a long, one of those long desks and only 3 chairs. So they have that awareness, and that'll start like kind of easing that anxiety. Also, how are you going to have safety measures communicated to customers and vendors? And thinking through too, what's really important is, do you need customers and vendors to come through? I think a big part of all of this is we've learned how much we can utilize Zoom and video calls and get a lot of work done. Obviously, there are some customers and clients and vendors that you do need to have. And so it's just creating a process of when they come on site. I know, for example, Ford, it's so interesting. They created a very concise questionnaire for anyone who comes into the door, they fill out. And then also looking at, okay, PPE, so masks. I know everyone's getting super creative. I don't have my mask on me. I was going to put it on, but my mom has made me a mask, and I've had some friends make me some cloth masks. It's kind of getting, I guess you find the joy somewhere. But also having extra masks on hand. Really important to have extra masks on hand because employees do forget, and we want everyone to feel comfortable. And also making sure we're training employees on the PPE. I know it sounds really silly, but again, it's that extra level that we all are aware of how we need to be practicing these safety measures. And then also just taking into consideration of what accommodations do we need to provide with employees with disabilities under the ADA when we're talking about different PPE. And most importantly, how are we going to hold employees accountable to the PPE? So I had one client who was saying, oh, no one's in the building, it's fine. Like, no, everyone needs to be wearing a mask. We need to be wearing a mask. I know it feels different, but making sure when you're talking about your task force, how are we going to hold people accountable? Because I'm going to be honest, me as well, it feels weird to be talking to someone that's 6 feet away. It feels weird, but I need to hold myself accountable, and I need to be reminded. The only way we're going to get through this is if we all hold each other accountable with social distancing and wearing masks and proper sanitization. Another, something I like from one of my clients is clean as you go. So having those Clorox wipes at everyone's desk and literally have them travel with that Clorox wipe, clean as you go. You go to the coffee maker, after you pour it, clean the coffee maker. You're at the fridge, clean it down. You use the restroom, clean it down. It's the only way that we're all gonna feel safe with the clean as you go. Make it fun, make it a game. Don't make it like this, detail it out. Make it like, we're all clean, we're all doing this together. Also providing tissues and no-touch disposal receptacles throughout the facility. Of course, providing, disinfectant, sanitation products, soap and water and hand sanitizers. Get ahead of the curve. If you already haven't ordered all of these supplies, order them now. And as also thermometers. And we're talking, if you're in San Diego, there's the infrared thermometer. So you just kind of, I'm showing like Melissa, like I kind of, instead of touching her, I zap her. And then create an inventory management plan for these items. So thinking about, okay, when is this going to run out? And maybe being more proactive. Maybe if you think it's 90 days, maybe pushing up to 60 days. Because again, we're in this boat for quite some time. And then also, when we talk about physical distancing, creating one-way traffic pathways, figuring out where, in cubicle land, or, maybe you have 2 sets of stairs. So maybe one set of stairs is, okay, we're only going up. And then the other set of stairs is we're only going down. Looking at your lunchroom. How many tables are there? I know one client, they literally, it's kind of sad. They pulled, it was like, 4 chairs per table. They pulled out 3 chairs at each table. So it's only 1 chair per table. Really look at your conference rooms. If it's a 10 conference room, 10 person capacity, and sit and look at it. Maybe it's only now a 3 person. If it is a small conference room, maybe we can turn that conference room into someone's office, because we're looking at the cubicles and we're looking the lay of the land. And if we're a little too tight, maybe we need to disperse some folks. Also, when we talk about conference, meetings, it might mean that, some people are going to be doing Zoom calls at their desk. We don't want to have everyone in conference rooms. We really want to reduce that. If there's any physical barriers that you need to put up, looking at your cubicles. I know some, do not, I'm like looking at my desk, like I live in a cubicle. Some, do have a short barrier, but maybe seeing if you can have put in a higher one. Also discourage handshaking. It's just going to be the way it is. So no handshaking. Also discourage sharing tools and equipment. And if you are, again, we're all at that printer, that shared printer, clean as you go. Have Clorox wipes right there, and maybe a little sign just reminding. And I know it feels like we're becoming everyone's mom, but we have to remind our employees. Also delivering products through curbside pickup. So just everywhere you can think about, how can I make sure we're reducing contact with each other, with customers and vendors? And business continuity. So, regarding, flexible sick leave and policies around that, before, we'd have maybe a little more tight monitor on this. Asking your employees, if you feel sick, if you wake up with that tickle in your throat, please stay home, even if it's the common cold. We don't want people sick coming into the office. And maybe that means they can then work from home if their job permits that. And if it doesn't, then maybe you and the leadership team need to consider some more relaxed sick policies right here. It's really going to help you at the end of the game. And then of course, look at what you were doing and capture it. From a business continuity perspective, every single one of you on this call responded to COVID-19 and had created best practices and had lessons learned. What if something like this happens again? I hate saying that, but it could. And so what would be really great is if you took the time, wrote down, okay, what did we do? How were we able to quickly navigate this and start working from home? And if we weren't able to, what do we need to now put in place? So then you can pick up business quickly. If a pandemic, or even, in California, we have wildfires, so on and so forth. Okay. So just piggybacking on HR policies, super important. We bring up HIPAA. So, we do have a few employees, we've heard of, and I'm sure you all have, some employees might come to you and say either, I've been exposed by COVID-19, I have COVID-19. There's a method to the process of communicating that there has been an exposure to the employees without compromising someone. So really just, when someone shares, so for example, if Melissa were to share with me, Kim, I, have a positive test, that doesn't mean that I then, share with my team, oh, Melissa, we would go then, okay, there has been an employee in the marketing department on the 3rd floor. And we can also help you with, creating a process around that. But just please be protective about people's names, and also with HIPAA, it's very sensitive. And then also, as far as policies addressing potential spread of COVID, positive test policy. So we actually, and if this is something we can also help you with, is we have a policy and a process that we've created on what happens if there is a positive test. And it literally is like line item what to do from, okay, what do I do with this employee? Okay, what paperwork, is it an emergency paid sick leave? Okay, give them the paperwork. Then talk to the employees from a perspective of there has been exposure, do the deep cleaning. So thorough process. Have that documented now so that you're not scrambling when it does happen, and you feel confident in the approach that you're taking. Also being aware of travel restrictions and requirements. Right now, I don't know if a lot of people are going on vacations. A lot of people don't feel comfortable traveling, but have a policy in place that if you have employees who maybe go do international travel, that means that you're probably going to have to work from home for 14 days. So just considering that, your employees and who's doing what. And then also just also thinking about travel restrictions from a perspective of your employees. Maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe normally your VP of Biz Dev he goes out and he visits all his different clients or different vendors. Maybe this isn't a good time. It's just, we got to stay video calls. And of course, in the area of HR, you know, consistency is crucial when we're talking about policies and following that. Reducing liability. So it's really important that we have awareness around liability and potential exposures for the company. Be aware of workers' compensation. So specifically in California, workers who contract COVID-19 while on the job may be eligible to receive workers' compensation benefits. So just be aware of that. Also be aware with OSHA. So make sure to have your safety practices documented and you're actively practicing them, because an employee could potentially, if they feel that you are not practicing your safety measures, they could go to OSHA and say, hey, this company, they're not practicing social distancing, and I don't feel safe. So have that awareness. Again, really think about who needs to be on site. So that can reduce liability as well. And then also from a San Diego perspective, also what I would recommend is there is the San Diego safety reopening plan that needs to be posted as well as provided to your employees. And then also the social distancing and sanitation plan. So again, I'm mentioning San Diego, but I know there's people on the call that have other locations. Look and see if your local ordinance is requiring any documents to be posted and communicated and provided to your employees. Also, you know, posting a sign in front of your location, of your office, and about asking if you have symptoms of COVID-19, please do not come in. Melissa created a great sign. So if you're interested in that, you know, we can share that. And just some other, you know, recommendations, developing written protocols for symptomatic employees, you know, according to CDC. You're gonna hear me saying CDC all the time, because that is the guiding entity that we're using for everything, because they're providing guidance from an employee perspective to, you know, the United States. Establish written protocols for returning to work after being symptomatic, and then again following the CDC guidelines. Training employees on the safety protocols, again based on the CDC guidelines. And what I would do with that training, I know it sounds silly, but have it written down. Who attended the training? What did you review? That's your documentation, and it's showing your good faith effort. Also, providing reasonable accommodations to individuals with disabilities as stated by the ADA. So just having that awareness. There are some people who have compromised immune systems that they actually can go through an ADA interactive process. Also identify what positions, if any, have potential occupational exposure to the coronavirus, and develop a protection plan for those high-risk areas. And again, reviewing those OSHA regulations determine the work-relatedness of the illness. Okay, so we're easing on in to the workplace. So really important to think about what positions can work from home. There might be some positions that you look at this right now and say, that position functions perfectly fine at home. And again, you're gonna hear me saying the word positions, not people. The only time we'll talk about you wanna consider people is if they have childcare issues. But when we talk about, you know, looking at, is it maybe people have a 50-50 schedule? Maybe they come in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they stay home Tuesday, Thursday, and another group comes in, you know, the other time. Also considering, you know, staggered. So maybe you have people coming in from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Maybe it's also a phased approach. Maybe you take your workforce and you have 3 tiers and you figure out, okay, we're going to phase this first tier in and then train them all, get them all used to what they need to do, and then phase in another group and then phase in the last group. So really thinking about, it's really getting creative and thinking outside the box on what's going to work for you guys, and really making sure when we're talking about phased approach that it is non-discriminatory. Again, we're looking at what positions, you know, need to be on site versus what positions can, you know, be working from home. your workspace. So I'm having, conversations with clients and I'm like, what's the lay of the land? And I have some clients who say, we have like a shared pod. We have 3 people in a shared pod. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we got to do something about that. So looking at maybe in that situation, maybe it is, we have a tiered, maybe 2 people come in on Monday, Wednesday, and then the other in their shifts are broken up. So really thinking about how can you distance people's cubicles and so people do feel safe, because often we do live in cubicle land. I know at my dad's company, they got to a point where it was just a long row of table and everyone was, you were like packed in like sardines. So really looking at how can we breathe and make sure we're working and have that social distancing. If you have outside space, let's utilize it. It's beautiful. Maybe put some umbrellas up, a table up, and maybe people can utilize that space to work outside. And, like I said before, are there conference rooms that can be turned into offices? How can you use outdoor spaces? Maybe there's also a situation that in your building, maybe another company isn't returning back, and maybe you can use their space. So just really getting creative about how you can make everyone feel comfortable coming back in. Okay, transparency is so key during this. So it's really important. Employee communication. So hopefully right now, you guys are currently, if you are currently working from home, how can you make sure to keep that open line of communication? So making sure the managers are, hopefully they're touching base once a week. I know a lot of companies, they're doing just a weekly happy hour call. I know one of the companies, they're doing this Wine Wednesday, and it's their COVID connection time, just to keep connected. But beyond that, maybe it's also having all hands meetings right now, and then continuing those all hands meetings once a week or however that feels right for your company, but making sure, they're keeping updated on the business practices and also the business operations. A lot of people right now, they're nervous. They're nervous about their job. They're nervous about the economy. And as much as business leaders can keep them updated on the operations and the status of the company, that will hopefully ease some anxieties. And also checking in on their mental health space. It's a very, we're in a tricky time. And so making sure, maybe it's something you have a webinar, again, something we do, or you make sure you have your managers check in with them and, having that open space of time to be like talking to them, like, how are you doing? How can I support you? And then, what's really important is, talking about transparency when you go to reopen, like I said earlier, have a return to work letter, stating the date, the coming back, how excited you are to have them back, briefly highlighting, the safety measures you're taking. And then also you can attach another document, like fully explaining all of the safety documentation. So they have awareness and like creating, if you can, doing that like a week out. I know in the restaurant industry, it was a little difficult because in San Diego, the switch got turned on super quick. It was like, I think we found out Thursday morning. And then just really thinking about, how are you going to handle employees who do not feel safe coming back to work? A lot of times it's those open conversations, figuring out, a lot of times people just want to talk about it. And if you can talk it through with them, come from an empathetic place, as much as we can show empathy during this time, it will really help your teams and your leaders. And then also being really transparent with employees who have kids. Employees with kids, and I'm sure there's some of you on the phone call right now, I'm sure you're burnt out. And some of you, your daycare provider is not going to open for another month or so, and school's not starting until August. We need to figure out how we can make sure that they still feel like they can be productive and good working. Thank you for your time.
And let's see if there's any questions.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, like I said, we're at 12:30, so typically we go to about 12:45 with questions. Kim, do you have time? You
Yes,
want to answer a few of these?
and I have Stephanie on backup to fact check and help me. So
Awesome. Okay, so if you do have a question, please type it into the chat box. You can just message me, Melissa, DBA CultureWorks. Okay, let's see. Looks like we have one. What should we do if we've furloughed someone and they don't want to come back because they just want to stay on unemployment?
oh goodness, Melissa, we've been receiving that question from weekly, and it's challenging, right? Because I know from the owner's perspective and the leader's perspective, some of them have been in the office and keeping that ship afloat and working. I think you just, when I reference that return to work letter, that's your documentation, and in it does say, our office is open. We're excited to have you come back to work. We need you to come back to work. Maybe it's June 15th. And if they come back to you and they're like, I'm sorry, this is in it, specifically in that you need to, and again, we can help you craft this, but specifically saying, well, then if you're not going to return to work, then you need to provide us with a voluntary resignation letter. And then and it's why this is so key is there could be a lot of you on this call who do have that PPP loan. And this will be documentation for that, because I know it does look at, the amount of people that came back to work from, furlough, and you want that documented, and then it'll be then your responsibility as the employer to go on the EDD website and report to them, this employee did not come back to work, and you have your documentation. I cannot stress documentation over verbal conversations. So.
Yeah. Document, document, document. It's like the motto of our industry.
Yes, I know.
Okay, looks like one more question too. We have an employee that's concerned about coming back to work, and although we do want to respect his concerns, we are an essential business. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so again, you're an essential business. So you really, first and foremost, talking live with this employee, a video call, again, we have that face-to-face, and figuring out what is their concerns. Is it fear? Is it safety? Is it, for some people, they're scared because they live with their parents, or I have a baby. So you have that concern, and, explaining to them, again, the safety measures that you are taking. I know one thing, our CEO, Christy, had also mentioned is thinking, are you making this mandatory to come back to work or voluntary? So also looking at it that way. I think every business owner has a different way of looking at. I know one client I've been working with, he's like, I support my employees, and he's had, and they're an essential business, and he had someone off for a week or 2 weeks because they just, at that time, when at the peak, they didn't feel comfortable. So I think it's first and foremost, from a foundational perspective as an employer, what are you requiring, mandatory or voluntary? And then if it is, say, mandatory, talking through it with them and saying, this is what we're doing. How can I help you get there? And if you're still having a hard time navigating that conversation, please feel free, reach out to us and we can help with that.
Yeah, definitely. Along with document, it's clarify, communicate, clarify. I know that's what we've all kind of seen over the past few months. Looks like one more question came in. One of my direct reports has told me that she has a compromised immune system. Does she have to come back to work now that we're reopening?
Great question. And it's, again, something that's come up this is then an opportunity you would work through the interactive process through the ADA. So you would work through an ADA reasonable accommodation. So it's, we have paperwork that we can help provide you and even help with that conversation. But really it is, talking with the employee, they would need to get a doctor's, note, medical certification. But yeah, that is an area that we want to make sure you navigate correctly. So yes, that more conversations on that that would need to be had with the employee. So it wouldn't be a simple, you need to return to back to work or you need to give us a voluntary resignation letter. You need to go through that interactive process.
Yeah, a lot of these questions you got to go really deep to kind of, ask questions, be curious, get to the root cause. I love what you said too about doing a video call with an employee, maybe not even just a phone call, or trying to email back and forth can get weird and yucky. And so that human connection, I think, is really what people need right now, especially if they're coming from a place of fear or, you know, worried, like you said, if they have a baby at home or they have ill parents or, you know, anything like that. There's a lot that our clients' employees are seeing that are all across the map as far as varying levels of concern over this. So I wanted to thank you all for your time today. It looks like there's no further questions in my chat box. So you can find us at cultureworkshr.com. We have an awesome blog that has some amazing COVID-19 resources there for you, including various blog posts, lots of resources and recommendations as far as legal help and things like that you can find there. And then feel free to email us if you have questions, if you need a flyer made for, you know, just wearing a mask, or if you need help, you know, diving into one of those nitty-gritty questions that we kind of came up with today, feel free to email our team. Our Culture Operations Specialist team can be found at cos@cultureworkshr.com. And just a heads up, we will be hosting one more webinar in this Wednesday webinar series. It's going to be probably in a couple weeks, and it's going to be on hiring for your culture fit post-COVID. So obviously the job market looks a little bit different now. The whole economic climate looks a little bit different now than it did 3 months ago. And so our goal is to really help you in mapping out that next talent acquisition plan for your organization. So thank you so much again, and thank you, Kim.
Thanks, you guys. Have a wonderful week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.